Hello and welcome. I got the month wrong last time. I'm making sure I get it right this time. This is the August edition of the Windows Insider Webcast. Super glad to be here. As you can see, I have my usual cohorts with me, Brandon LeBlanc and Jennifer Gentleman. Excited to do another one of these. We didn't have one last month. We usually take off a couple months during the year. That's usually July and December between vacations and holidays and all that kind of fun stuff. So it's good to be back with you this month. Hopefully folks can hear me. Always got to do an audio check real quick, but I think it should be working just fine. Brandon and Jen, do you want to say hello?
Hello.
And Brandon just waves.
Hello.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. There shouldn't be any echoes or any of that fun stuff. I believe I've got it all set up right this time, which is probably the first time in a long time. So you can't have fun poking at yourself, then you can't have fun at all. This is going to be a fun one. If you recall back in, what was it? May? The one that I got wrong because I kept calling it March. The May Insider Webcast, we talked about the controller bar feature. As part of the Xbox Game Bar. We got a lot of great questions, and we also got a lot of feedback that folks wanted to actually talk about the Game Bar as a whole. So that's what we're bringing to you this month. We have a fantastic group of folks here from the Xbox Game Bar team. They're here to answer some questions, talk about some features, show you a little demo content, talk about some of the changes that have showed up along the way. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. We're glad you're tuning in with us today. If you have questions that you want to ask, of course, throw those in the chat at any point in time. We'll possibly tackle some of them along the way. We may save some of them till the end. You know how these webcasts usually go. It's a little bit of a hodgepodge, which is kind of what makes it fun. Brandon, Jen, anything y'all want to throw in before we bring on the guests and kind of get this show on the road?
I mean,
I hate Mondays.
I resemble that
yes,
remark.
I'm not ready for 10 a.m. Oh, God. Anyway, Brandon.
I can echo that and then just say that, just to keep in mind, let's keep the chat, on topic for the discussions for what we're going to be showing. And then I'll be in the chat to help with that. And then, ask questions. So.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, because I know we've already ticked off a few minutes here. Oh, and I just want to say, in case my mouse dies, you see the little red blinking light. It means the batteries are going to die. So if you see me make a mad dash and disappear off camera, it's probably because I'm grabbing batteries for my mouse. Of course, this is always what happens, right? You get in the middle of something, especially when you're doing it live, and technology is just like, not today. So, Jen, you're comment about Mondays? Yeah, my mouse is having a Monday. So let's go ahead and bring on the Game Bar team. Click here, and then poof, all of a sudden everybody shows up. I will say ahead of time, as I build out the content for these webcasts, we have to pre-build the scenes and whatnot. It was exciting, and there's another person who showed up, which you won't be able to see him immediately because I don't have a little box built out for him. There's only 7 of us on the screen, but you'll probably see me typing diligently in the background as I try to finish recreating a new scene so I can bring Andrew back on. But I will call folks out by name. Some already can introduce themselves, although you won't see Andrew at least for the first part of the webcast, but I promise you I'm working on it behind the scenes. So without further ado, let's meet the new faces who you may not have seen before. I'll just do them kind of in order across the top row. So, Brianna, could you introduce yourself? I don't know, some fun stuff. I don't know. Obviously, your name, what team you're on, and I don't know, how long you've been at Microsoft.
Sure. My name is Brianna Potvin. I am a principal software engineering lead on the PC Game Pass team at Xbox, and I just hit my 10-year anniversary at Microsoft. So I've been here quite a while. I've only been on the team 7 months. Previously, I worked on Surface Hub, mixed reality, HoloLens, VR, and now I get to work on Xbox, which I'm really excited about.
That's a whole lot of experience you've tucked into that 10 years. I think I've had 3 different roles, and I think you just rattled off like 5 or 6. Doing work.
I like shipping. I like shipping weird hardware, but now I was like, you know what? It's time to see what I can do to make Game Pass more fun, as well as our gaming experiences on Windows.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being here. Next up, across the row is Daniel.
Hey, I am the PM working on the Xbox side of things. Do a lot of work on the game bar area and generally PC gaming scenarios. I've been at Microsoft a little over 7 years, I guess coming up on 8 years. And the funny thing is that when we first built the very first version of Game Bar years ago, I actually used to work on the Windows team over on the graphics side of things, which is the team that started building that. And then I went and worked on a bunch of other features for a while. And then when I moved over to the Xbox team a few years back, I got to kind of come back to Game Bar after the team has done a whole bunch of cool work and see, like, here's that thing that was really small that we first started out. I came back and the team had done a bunch of awesome stuff and turned it into this huge utility with all this cool stuff. So that was fun moving over to Xbox and working on gaming stuff, but also seeing like how much Game Bar had grown in the time that I was gone.
It's funny. The wheels of change never stop moving, and you either keep rolling with them or hopefully don't get run over by them. But I mean, like much like Brianna's saying, is like, you just keep going from thing to thing, and that's one of the beautiful things about Microsoft being such a big company. There's always so much to explore and so much to just go and get your hands dirty working on, and I say that in a good way because there's always something to dig into.
Yeah, definitely.
Next up, Hayden, how's it going?
Hello. Yes. Hi, I'm Hayden. I'm a senior software engineer on the Windows team, and I've been spending the past year working on the controller bar feature. Also been with Microsoft a little over 7 years. I started working as a PM actually on personalization features. So we worked on bringing dark theme to Windows 10 was the first feature that I got to sink my teeth into. And then from there, a bunch of weird hardware. So worked on Surface Duo, worked on Surface Neo, and then I got the privilege of working on some gaming features. So it's been great.
Oh my goodness. I'm sure folks out in the audience saw my reaction as soon as you mentioned the words dark mode. It is, I'm not even going to fib, it is probably still to date, although there's a ton of stuff in Windows 11 that I absolutely love. Dark mode is probably still the best thing to ever come to computing and phones and technology in general, because I don't know, I'm just one of those super big dark mode fans. I would dark mode the entire world. That probably sounds weird, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
That sounds like a horror show, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, in the Insider builds, Task Manager has dark mode support now, and I'm like, my eyes, thank you.
All right. Next up, the last box across the top, Jen made a comment saying it feels like we're the Brady Bunch. This really does feel like the Brady Bunch. I love all these little squares. Mark, if you could take a moment and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mark. I have been at Microsoft for 21 years, a very long time. And I'm a developer, and these days I work on Game Bar and a few other things in gaming. But I've done consumer stuff from the beginning. I worked on Windows Media Center way back in the aughts, if anybody remembers that. Then shifted over to Zune, and on the, among other things, the first Zune streaming, video streaming app on the console, the 360 it was at the time. And then moved over to the console proper and gaming. So now I'm living my childhood dream of being a gaming dev.
Does it make you feel old when you think that some of the interns might be younger than you've worked at Microsoft?
Yes, it does. And I remember when I was working at Media Center, you had to have a powerful machine back then to be able to record HD video coming in on your PC. Like, you couldn't just do it with anything. You had to get one that was kind of purpose-built for it. So it's been a lot of change in that time, definitely.
That's hilarious. So I will say, and then I mentioned at the beginning, Andrew is back for round 2. I don't know if we've ever, other than the usual crew that gets together, I don't know if we've ever had somebody be on Webcast this close together. Andrew, you're breaking new ground here. And I know folks, unfortunately, won't get to see you. So here, I'll do this. Even though I'm not finished with it, right? I'm going to transition it over just so folks can see I'm actually working on it. You're just going to appear as a black box right now. But I promise I'm doing work. Even my name tag is supposed to be like over in the, let me go this way, or in the left corner. It's not even centered properly. It's, like I said, it's a work in progress, but I'm trying here. Andrew, would you take a moment and introduce yourself, please?
All right. Hi, everyone. It's great to be back. And so I'm Andrew Lass. I'm a PM in the in the Windows team, and I've been working with Hayden and Mark and Daniel and everyone on Controller Bar this past year, really. So it's been a blast. I have been at Microsoft for coming up 14 years, and I started. Fun fact, maybe people don't know this about Jennifer, but she and I started on the same team. Jennifer was working on font technology back then, and so that's where I started. And
I had a lot less gray hair back then, and so did you.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, font technology, it'll do it to you. So yeah, we've had a lot of fun. I've moved on to languages and spent a lot of time on keyboards, and also worked with Hayden a little bit on the Surface Dial. That was a fun role too. So so it felt like getting the band back together and doing a bit of Control Bar stuff. So it's been great to be here.
Awesome. Just so folks don't have to stare at the empty box, I'm going to transition back. So folks do know that Andrew's here and listening and be, checking out some of the questions that come in. Well, now that we've gone through the intros, I'll just say thank you all once again for making the time to be here and come and share some of the fantastic stories and information about Game Bar. I know there's of course, as usual, there's a presentation we're going to walk through. So, Daniel, anytime you're ready to cue that up, once you get that shared.
Hey, Jason.
Yeah, Brandon.
Real quick, you said to interrupt. Andrew's video was coming in as black on the.
Yep, it's
okay.
By design, it's a feature.
All right, I just want to make sure. Maybe I missed it, but
it's like it's we're working on it in the feedback hub. Quite literally, I am in the middle of it. Ooh, that's fine. Full
on dark mode.
Yeah, seriously. And Teams is showing some purple boxes for some folks right now. That's super fun. See, this is the joy of technology. Sometimes it's brilliant. Sometimes it's like, hey, that's not quite as expected. I do see that the content is being presented, so we're going to take folks' videos off the screen anyway. Let me go ahead and get this queued up. Transition rolling. And the presentation has begun. So you are free to kick it off. And then, as we mentioned previously, whenever you are ready for the demo video, just give me a heads up and I will get that queued up as well.
Cool. Sounds good. So, we wanted to share just kind of an overview for folks who may not be too familiar about what Game Bar is. So Game Bar is a customizable and flexible kind of modular PC gaming overlay. It's designed to give you a bunch of different utilities and widgets and sort of things to help you out while you're playing PC games. So you can open it at any time by pressing the Windows G hotkey or by pressing the Xbox button on your Xbox controller, and it'll bring this overlay up. It's something that's built into Windows, so anyone on a Windows 10 or a Windows 11 machine, this is built in and should just work as soon as you press that key right out of the box. So you can, while you're playing your game, press Windows G, bring it up, and see all kinds of utilities there and customize. You can choose to open or close which widgets are relevant to you, move them around the screen, and really figure out what kinds of utilities are helpful for you in Game Bar. We've been working on Game Bar for quite a while now. We're always listening to user feedback and finding new ways to add new features or improve existing features. So we've been working on some things. We're going to talk a little bit more about Controller Bar in a minute here. And there's also some additional updates since the last time that we talked about Controller Bar here. Oops. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. There's also general bug fixing and performance improvements that we're always focusing on in Game Bar here. In the next upcoming release, we're adding controls for turning noise suppression on for party chat, so you can get more crisp audio when you have your Xbox parties going in game. We've got support for a lot of gaming utilities in Game Bar. So one of the recent ones that was added in our previous release here was some settings and controls to make playing HDR games on PC easier. So we know that a lot of folks like to turn HDR on or off depending on what they're doing on their PC. So Game Bar adds a hotkey so you can do that really quickly and easily wherever you are. And then one of the really cool features the Xbox team's been working on, both on console and PC, is the auto HDR feature. And so it can actually take games that weren't originally designed for HDR, and it does this really great tone mapping and sort of converts them to an HDR experience. So Game Bar gives you the controls to turn that on or off on a per game basis, and some tweaks so that you can get that looking just right depending on the individual game. So we're excited about that. And there's a gaming features section within Game Bar settings where we like to build out sort of more information and controls and things like that for a lot of the gaming related features that Windows supports. So HDR is an example of one of those. One of the new ones we're really excited about is direct storage. So one of the amazing features with the latest generation of consoles is direct storage, and how quickly things like loading levels, loading your games, and things like that can be done with this new technology. And we're now seeing that same technology light up on PC. So in Game Bar, you can go into the settings there and check whether your system is configured and good to go to take advantage of that direct storage feature once games start rolling out that support that. We also have a new feature for child accounts where if you're requesting, if a child account is requesting that they accept a friend request, if there are parental controls attached to that account, now Game Bar gives you all the tools you need for the child to request permission for that. So making sure that all of the tools in Game Bar for things like friends lists and party chat and all that work well with the rest of the Xbox ecosystem, the controls that you're used to and expect there. So there's always a whole lot of interesting stuff in Game Bar, lots of little things, little fixes, and then also interesting new features as we learn more about some of the either pain points that we want to try to make things easier on PC, or just new features that players are looking for and excited to see light up here. Controller bar is a huge one that I am super excited about. We've talked about it on a previous webcast. There's been, a little bit more work and it's evolved a little bit more here. And so I'm going to actually pass it over to Hayden, who's going to talk more about controller bar. So go ahead and take it away with the video too.
Yeah, totally. Thanks. So why don't we get the video queued up to play? This is a new feature we wanted to show off on launching cloud streaming games directly from the controller bar. So let me know when we're ready to roll the video.
All right, I am bringing that up right now. I believe I have it queued up. It is not set to autoplay, so I'm going to click it, and as soon as I see it rolling, I will give you the heads up.
All right. Okay, so this runs a little bit fast, but you'll see I pull up controller bar and Golf with Your Friends is there. It's not installed on my machine, but I click on it anyway, and I launch straight into Golf with Your Friends, which is a cloud streaming game. For those of you who have not seen controller bar before, it's a new feature available in Insider program right now. It lets you have quick and easy access to your recently played games, and also quick and easy access to your various game launchers. And you should see we're right into Golf with Your Friends. Didn't even have to install it. Straight into the game that I've been playing on another machine. So that is the cloud streaming feature on controller bar. That is it for the video.
That was super smooth and super fast. And so I'm gonna flip off of the PowerPoint for a moment. I'm gonna bring us back up. Let me ask you something. Like, is it always that fast? Is that like? I'm amazed at like how smooth and fluid and just like that was awesome.
Yeah, and I had to slow it down a little bit for the recordings, so that you can see it right. But yeah, it's great to be able to jump straight in, and I had played it before, right? Mm-hmm. It's a game I play often with friends, so being able to do that, straight away without having to find the game, install it, it's just an awesome feature.
So do they have a companion version of that game called Golf with Strangers? Hey! Who said I can't tell bad jokes while we're on air? All right. I'll stop hamming it up and I'll put the presentation back on.
Yeah, totally. And if folks haven't tried controller bar yet, get on the Insider program, plug in a controller, hit the Xbox button, give it a shot. It's really great. And then I'll hand it back to Brianna to go through the rest of the presentation.
Yeah. To Hayden's point, it's not out in regular Windows builds just yet, but you can have access to all these amazing features if you're a Windows Insider, as well as, this is my kind of advertising point, to also join the Xbox Insider program. So we ship at a certain cadence some of our functionality, like Game Bar, through the Windows Insider program, but we also have kind of, if you want the latest and greatest, join the Xbox Insider program. So you can enroll by downloading the Xbox Insider Hub and then joining the Windows Gaming Preview. And this gives you the latest builds fresh off the press for Game Bar, the Xbox app for PC, as well as gaming services. It's really helpful and beneficial to make sure when we ship things that we get the right information, we get the right bugs, we fix the issues, so we can make sure that when it rolls up to a larger amount of customers, everyone has a great experience. You also get sneak peeks of the latest features that are coming online. So if you like the latest and greatest, I highly encourage you to join the Xbox Insider program. We listen to your feedback, we read the bugs, and a lot of the feedback we get has really influenced the way that what we decide what features to build next. So if you can go to the next slide, thanks, Daniel. And so these are examples of some of those those community-driven features that have come from your feedback. So for example, the performance and task manager widgets, we heard loud and clear from our gamers that they want to make sure all their system resources is going to the games that they're playing so they can crank up those settings. And one of the ways they do that is having task manager and performance so they can keep track of any processes in the background. So we added those widgets to the game bar by default so people can see their system resources. Next, people are like, hey, I want to see it on my screen all the time, but they get in the way. And so we added the ability to have pin widget click through. So it allows you to pin widgets on your desktop, go back to your game, see those widgets overlaid on top of your game, but your input and mouse clicks don't get absorbed by them. So they don't get in the way of the games that you're playing. And finally, we get tons of questions around like, oh, it'd be really great to have this widget or this widget or this widget. So we created the Game Bar SDK that allows developers to build any widget that they want to have it interact and show up within Game Bar. So you get kind of the familiar use model, but it really allows anyone to extend the Game Bar for what they want to do, from a calculator, Spotify. There's tons of different widgets, and I'll let Mark talk to that next.
Sure. Yeah, as Brianna indicated, we knew that there'd be a hunger for all different kinds of things, probably way more than we could ever build. So it made sense to create a way for people to make their own widgets and put them in the Windows stores so they can be available to others. There's some pretty cool ones in there right now. I think you can probably put most of the widgets into one of three buckets. The first would be companion widgets to some piece of hardware or software. So as one example, if you have an EVGA graphics card, you can download their EVGA Precision widget, and you get access to their monitoring and overclocking software, which, as you can imagine, might be something pretty useful to be able to see and interact with during gameplay. There's some similar examples to that by Corsair and Razer. As a software example, XSplit has a widget that allows you to interact with their broadcast software for all the streamers out there. The second bucket would probably be widgets designed for a specific game. There's a Valorant widget, there's a Destiny 2 widget, and a few others. That gives you access to things that might be useful during gameplay. So maps, status of quests, and all the different things you're doing in the game, what your friends are doing, ways to interact with them. That, I think, is an area that's really open, where we could have, there's so many games out there and there's so many ideas you could come up with for interesting and useful information specific to that game. I think that's an area that's ripe for people to make really cool additions to. And the third, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, can I, if you don't mind me asking you a quick question there?
Yeah.
Are there any bounds on what people can make widgets for in that space? Because with as many things as you just listed, it sounds like there's a ton of ways to add really, really helpful information about, the experience you're immersed in for whatever game or, app you happen to be running. Like, it seems pretty flexible.
It is. I mean, a widget is mostly just an app, a Windows EWP app. So anything an app can do that you can build an app to do, you can build a widget to do. So yeah, I think that really the sky's the limit when it comes to what the possibilities are. The specifics of how to do it for any given game are going to vary based on the game, of course. But I know there's a lot more of that sort of open things are programmed into games these days, and ways to get together that information. So yeah, I think it's a really huge potential opportunity for people who are interested in developing widgets. And let's see, the third bucket would be just sort of a random list of utilities, which, can be really simple, but can be surprisingly useful during gameplay. One example is there's a simple to-do list app, and you bring that up, and it can actually be really useful in the middle of a game, especially if you're playing a game that doesn't have that type of functionality built into it. Some other examples are clocks, counters, stopwatches, and your basic web browser. Being able to pin a web page, maybe with a list of instructions on how to do something while you're playing, is pretty useful. There really is no limit to what can be done. Anything that can be done in an app can be done in a extension widget. And that leads me to sort of talk about the SDK. So we publish an SDK for people who want to create these widgets. There'll be some links in the next slide in a minute. But basically, if you can write a Windows UWP app, you are 99% of the way there to what you need for a extension widget. And if you can't, it might be a good learning opportunity. But basically, you write your widget and you link in our SDK and you make a few changes to how you handle how your app gets activated. And you add a little flag to it in the store that tells it's a game bar widget, and you're there. It's really just a few extra hours of work. It's not very much. So, sometimes I thought if you're someone who's maybe new to coding or you're new to Windows app development specifically, it might be sort of a good learning opportunity, because you can make a really simple app, like a to-do list is an example, or like a stopwatch is an example of a very simple app, but it actually would have real utility, potentially. Just those little bits of functionality are actually very useful for things like widgets, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And so let's see, there's a little bit of more information on that slide about the type of experiences we support. Things like click-through and transparent backgrounds are nice if you want your widget to be pinnable over the gameplay. And on the next slide, it'll have the two links you need, one to the docs for the SDK and one to the samples that we've published to get you started. So if this is something that interests you, by all means, check out these links.
That is awesome. We'll leave this up on the screen for just a moment in case anybody wants to take a screenshot to keep those links. And we can also come back and grab those and throw them in the chat, or I can drop those out on Twitter sometime this afternoon after the webcast. There's a couple things that I did want to say. Like, there's so much information covered I love how much information there is in just a few slides. And I'm going to bring us back up on the screen. So give me just a moment so everybody can see all of our smiling faces once again. So we did talk about, when Brianna was talking earlier about feedback, I dropped it in the chat. But if you are obviously in Windows and you want to file feedback related to Game Bar, you can do that at any time. The first drop down, so the category would be gaming and Xbox, and then the context, which is the second drop down, would just be Game Bar. And you can submit bugs, suggestions, whatever the case may be. File it just like normal feedback, and of course all the usual stuff applies. If you got a screenshot, that's super helpful, and if you can use repro mode if you're hitting something unexpected, that always goes a long way in helping teams triage and understand the kind of scenario that's being faced. I will say, as we were chatting, and Mark, thanks for letting me interrupt you with that question a moment ago. It was just like kind of the context of widgets. Every time I talk about widgets, it was always like, it's like this giant door opening, and it's like, it just seems like this sea of endless possibilities. That's one of the things that I love about widgets. There's a lot of questions that have come in, and I know both Brandon and Jen have been like catching some of them. I've been trying to make mental notes of them, but there's just no way I can keep track of all that stuff. So before we jump straight into Q&A, from the Xbox Game Bar folks, are there any other points or anything else like you want to leave with users before we jump into Q&A? I know we've covered a ton of material so far.
No, I would just say, tagging on to what Brandon and Mark already said, is that a lot of the features, some of my favorite features in Game Bar today, were features we built based on feedback and suggestions from the community. So we're always super interested, like not just bugs. We love to hear about bugs and fix them and make Game Bar better. But if there's things that you wish a gaming overlay had, we love to hear about that stuff, because that's what's driven a lot of the design and where we decide to focus for new features.
Awesome. And I did mention a moment ago about dropping in the link into the chat. So you're gonna hear me clacking on my keyboard for just a second. I apologize for that. I want to make sure that I get this. I want to make sure I spell this correctly, because You only get one shot when you're putting it in something that's being recorded for all of posterity. aka.ms/gamebardev. And I believe I spelled that correctly, and so that is in chat now. So anybody who is interested in some of the dev side of what was covered, grab that link here out of chat, visit that. It'll take you to a bunch of helpful resources. And then off of the earlier slide, so if you happen to be watching the video on demand, if you do want to drop a tweet to the folks monitoring this on social, that Twitter handle was in there as well. I can try to grab a link to that, or if somebody happens to have it handy, please feel free to throw that in chat at any time. Yeah, shall we jump into some Q&A type stuff? I know that there was a lot of stuff that came rolling in, some very interesting stuff. Brandon, Jen, anything you want to throw out there as the first one to kick it off?
Jen said she was tracking the questions, so I'm gonna let her.
Okay.
I've just been answering the ones that I can answer in the chat directly.
Excellent.
Jen speaks much better when she's not muted.
You speak very well. We just can't hear you.
Yeah. Actually, so yeah, I've been recording all the questions people have asked in the chat. This one literally just dropped, and I just think it sounds so cool. But the question is, like, does the Game Bar team have any plans to help people troubleshoot gaming performance and like make gaming performance feedback more actionable for people, but also help them figure out what's causing performance issues?
That is a good, interesting question.
Right?
Yeah. So, trying to think of the most helpful way to answer. So, as far as do we have plans, we typically don't share plans about stuff unless it's, in the works and coming out soon. But we're always sort of thinking about and looking at opportunities, right? So the performance widget is something that's a part of Game Bar today that lets you monitor performance of your game. We have made some feature additions and improvements to that over time. So earlier this year, we made some improvements so that it's a little bit easier for people to use that widget, even if, for example, you're not an admin, you can still get all the features. It's a little bit more performant with a different API under the hood that powers it. So we know that's super important as a scenario for PC gaming. Like getting the most out of your game is always super important and can often be really tricky too. So that's something that we're always interested in giving the right tools to try to help users out there. The tricky piece is with Game Bar, we also want to make sure that the widgets that we provide are also sort of their companions to your gaming experience. And so we want to make sure that they're not too complicated where they're going to be distracting or too hard to figure out. And so it's always that striking the right balance of what's a helpful utility versus what's a super complex tool for those power users. So I think it's an interesting scenario, and I think as we learn more about, hey, is there a way that Game Bar can help solve that problem? I think that's the kind of thing we're interested in. So nothing specific to share, but I think, yeah, totally feel you on that. Like, hey, can someone help make this better?
Like from a feedback side, there is a specific place in the feedback hub for filing feedback about game performance. And Jason, or maybe I could probably dig it up. Like we have steps for like how to log actionable feedback about performance. And I know, interestingly, like Sebastian, he's not on the call, but he's really passionate about analyzing all the feedback as it comes in. And he said, like, if you have a performance issue with gaming, like one, make sure that the feedback repro traces, which is like capture the issue, are type performance and not the default type for the context. And also, like, if you have performance issues with gaming, you should not file feedback with screenshots, because the act of taking the screenshot could impact the performance trace itself, which is just kind of a fun fact. Because performance in gaming is so sensitive, like the very littlest FPS.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we actually work with Sebastian's team on those kinds of scenarios too. So yeah, that's spot on, and super important for getting like good feedback to help us, troubleshoot those issues.
So two things. Number one, I did look up that link you were talking about, Jen, about great performance feedback. That is now in the chat. It is aka.ms/greatperfb. So GreatPerfFB. So there are two F's in there. So that one's in there. And then if you happen to be looking on the stream, guess what? Andrew's on the screen now.
Hey.
What? I got that fixed up. It took me a little bit longer as I was trying to multitask, but now everybody's on the screen, so, super duper fun. Anyway, sorry, I'll get back on track with the questions here.
Another question is, if I have both Intel and NVIDIA graphics, like how do I make sure that the game bar is picking, or like the game is picking the right graphics card so that I get the most performant experience?
Somebody likes living dangerously.
Funny enough, before I came over to Xbox, I used to work on that feature on the Windows side of things.
There you go.
So yeah, we typically call that hybrid graphics when you've got more than one GPU on your system. And there is a feature that I actually used to work on. If you go into Windows settings, there's a section in there called graphics settings. And when you have multiple GPUs on your system, that gives you all the controls to see. You can, for example, let's say there's a game, you want to make sure it's running on your fast GPU. You can go and check that that's the case, or if you wanted to customize which GPU it runs on, you can do that as well. And you can even set that different for different apps. So maybe I want to make sure my games are running on the high performance GPU, but when I'm running Notepad, I don't need it to do that, and I want to save the battery. And so you can actually go configure per app like that if you'd like to. So if you go into Windows settings and search for graphics settings, you should be able to see all the controls for that.
Today I learned. What? I honestly didn't know. This is one of the things that I say literally every webcast, but it's absolutely true. I always learn something every single time we do one of these. So it's part of the reason why we keep doing it. Not only we want insiders to learn new things, heck, I want to learn new things here.
There's another question which just came in, which is, are there any widgets that you would recommend for helping improve accessibility of games? That fell into the accessibility niche.
That is a good question.
It's a good question. Probably maybe specific to the game you had in mind.
I'm not aware of one existing off the top of my head. We do a ton of work for accessibility in Game Bar, and it's tricky for a whole bunch of regions because of, we're trying to cram a lot of information into a small overlay, and that creates that in itself, it can be an accessibility issue. And our interaction model was very originally keyboard and mouse driven. And we've made some pretty good improvements with that. And we've also tried to improve the controller, the interface with the gamepad, make it more usable with gamepad. We've made some nice, in the last about year or so, we've made some nice improvements there. I am not aware of a specific widget by itself, but that seems like a great opportunity. I mean, that's just an example of, there's so many ideas out there that I have never had that specific idea, but that sounds like an amazing idea. There's got to be a huge, something that can be done with that is incredibly useful. I hope someone out there has ideas. I mean, I'd be curious to know more information about specifics of what you'd like to do with it. But I think that's a really great idea. Unfortunately, I don't know of anything off the top of my head that exists like that right now, but it certainly should.
There is another question, which is the other questions. What would you recommend I do if I have an issue and I feel like it's not getting the attention I think it should get in the feedback hub? Are there other accounts I could reach out to on Twitter or somewhere else?
So this is a great one. If you are part of our Xbox Insiders program, I put all the links to all the socials, to our Reddit and Twitter, and our Xbox Insiders program team monitors those, and they will be like, hey, we're seeing this issue in our Insiders ring. Can you go fix it? So we'll usually ask you to file a feedback hub because we get a lot of useful telemetry and logs to help diagnose what's going on. But reaching out to those programs or to those kind of handles are a great way to make your feedback heard. Because sometimes, maybe you have a unique configuration on your PC that might not catch in our kind of internal testing. And so it's always good when you give us a feedback, because there might be a larger community than our beefy machines that we have at work. So I highly recommend filing a feedback hub, as well as reaching out to both our Xbox Insiders program.
Is it expected that the Xbox game bar only shows up on the main monitor, even if you have multiple monitors?
I can answer that. So when you bring up Game Bar, it has what's called the target, which is what window had focus before it came up. In a lot of cases, that's going to be the game you're playing. But one of the funny things is people often use Game Bar for desktop productivity scenarios, which is not really what was originally designed for. It does support multi-monitor, but it will only display on one monitor at a time. So where it appears will depend on where the window is that had focus right before you hit WinG. So you can bring it up on your other monitor if you want. Just click on a window or the desktop over there, hit WinG, and it should come up. We've talked, it does not allow you to drag widgets from monitor to monitor at the current time. We've talked about possibly doing that. It's a fair amount of work. It's something we'd like to do, but it's a fair amount of work. So if it comes, it won't be anytime really soon. But it does support multi-mon, but only one monitor at a time.
Will there be something similar to HDR calibration like on the Xbox on PCs?
I love that question. That's something that when we worked with the HDR controls, the team that built the calibration experience on Xbox, we talked with them, often over the years working on video recording and HDR stuff. I love the way that experience works on console. So it's not something that we have planned, but I think it's a perfect fit for something that I'd love to see light up in Game Bar in the future.
Another HDR type question. I'm newly using HDR in Windows. I see a slider in the Xbox Game Bar, but I have no idea what the numbers mean on the slider. Can you explain it to me?
Sliders with HDR are always really complicated. Like, even when you understand all of the math of what it's doing behind the scene, it can still be complicated to sort of figure out what it's adjusting. So with HDR, there can be sometimes multiple sliders. Like if you look at Windows HDR, sometimes there is a paper white or a baseline brightness, and there's peak brightness. So ultimately, the slider is sort of adjusting for the content in HDR that's really bright. Like, how much brighter should it be? There may be games like, for example, Superhot is this awesome game. It has this cool art style, but it has a lot of glowy neon stuff. And so that's a game where when you turn on HDR, for some people, depending on your monitor, it may just be too bright and just too intense. And so you need to go tune it in for that. And another game may be more subtle with the way that HDR gets applied to that game. And so ultimately, it's kind of showing how extreme is that dynamic range in HDR. Sometimes that's just going to mean, how bright are the brightest parts. But it's really just a control to sort of tune how does this work for the game that I'm playing right now? Because it will vary a lot from game to game, like what's that right balance. So it's kind of like brightness, but it's a little messier than that under the hood.
Yeah, and one other point is, I think it's probably worth clarifying that where we use the term HDR, we're talking about the actual real Windows built-in HDR. Where we use auto HDR, we're talking about this is not really HDR, but we're sort of mimicking it behind the scenes, and I believe that's the slider. It's one of those things that's very hard to get those concepts across in just a couple words or a couple acronyms. If you search around, there are developers on those teams write blog posts with a fair amount of detail about how this stuff works under the hood. Usually on, if you search for various Microsoft developer blogs, it's not even something I know that much about. So it's nice to go to the source to find the people who actually implemented it if you can. But at the end of the day, you adjust the slider till it looks the best to you. I think is probably the best advice I can give.
And I think this actually came up in the last webcast. We had two, but I suspect there's interest in rehashing the question, which is there any chance of you considering adding more features designed for controller-oriented scenarios on Windows?
Totally. Yeah. So, as Hayden talked about earlier, controller bar is a huge one. About a year ago, we made a big push to try to make using a controller with Game Bar easier. So just things like, navigating around between various widgets, moving widgets, making sure that you can get to all the different controls. The way that widgets, all these little pieces spread out across your screen, can be kind of tricky to figure out how to make controller work well. So that's something that it's really challenging, but it's something that is super important. A lot of us use controllers for playing games on PC, so we're always wanting to make that better. And we've done work to try to make it easier to use controller just for the widgets that we have in general. And one of the pain points we found was, but I always have to put down my controller, get my keyboard and mouse to start up the game and get into it before I pick my controller back up and can actually play. And so controller bar is an awesome way to get you, if you want to play with a controller, you can just pick up your controller, get right into the launcher, get right into the game, and get playing more easily. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at as ways to make, controller gaming better on PC. Always interested in doing more, but I think that's a huge one that I'm super excited about. I've been in the Insider program using that feature for a while now, and it's like a game changer for me.
Now imagine you're about to say, and if there are any scenarios you wish are better, please file feedback about it so we can take them under consideration.
Yep.
This question is, sometimes the Xbox game bar isn't working on my laptop. Are there any basic troubleshooting options I can go after to try and help resolve that?
That is a good question. I mean, the biggest thing to do is probably, obviously, if you think of as a software tester, which is what I started my career as.
Hey, me too.
Yeah. If you can quantify the difference, like what is different about the scenario when it works or when it doesn't. I assume when you mean doesn't work, you hit Wingy and it doesn't appear or something like that.
I assume so, yeah.
Yeah, there are a couple of specific scenarios. If your focus is on a command prompt window or a PowerShell window, I mean, this is kind of a specific thing, but like there can be issues with it appearing for a bunch of technical reasons that really aren't worth getting into. And there are some games. Yeah, another thing I should probably point out is there are some games, depending on the display technology the game is built on, there are some games where we cannot show ourselves as an overlay. There's a lot less of them than there used to be because there's been a bunch of advances made in the DirectX team around giving us the ability to display ourselves over top of games without sacrificing performance. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that, including historical reasons about how Windows draws games on the screen. So yeah, my advice would be check out, what the scenario is, if it's specific games or not specific games. Different games use different display technologies, some of which might cause issues, a lot of which do not, and we work fine over. Try to narrow it down that way. And the other thing I can say is if you go to the game bar settings panel, and you go to the feedback tab, there is a open log folders link in there that will open folders. Although I guess you probably wouldn't be able to read them without some expertise because they're not in text. So if you can file a feedback hub, if you can repro your scenario and file a feedback hub, we will get those logs uploaded, and that allows us to take a look at them and potentially see what's going on. That's another option.
This one says there used to be a feature where your screenshots that you take with the Xbox Game Bar uploaded to Xbox Live, but that doesn't seem to be possible anymore. Do you think in the future it would be possible again?
That's a good question. So within Game Bar, there are kind of a couple teams that own different pieces of it that work together there. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone from the team that owns that piece on the call right now. So I probably don't have an informed answer. But yeah, maybe that's one that we can follow up. Maybe tweet at the accounts that we mentioned earlier for Xbox Insider, and then if there's any updates on building a new version of that or changes to that, that may be a way to learn more.
Yeah. So yeah, just second what Daniel said. We don't have the right developer here to answer that for sure, but I know they have made changes and improvements to the number of places and ways you can upload your captures. It's possible that was behind an experiment, which means it was maybe on for some people and off for some people, or it was maybe related to flighting. I don't know if you're in a flighting group. We can follow up. Maybe that's something that we can tweet out. We can follow up on the status of that. I don't believe that's. I don't think there's a plan to remove that functionality. It seems like it's useful functionality, and I think it's something they've been expanding. So there's probably some reason, like one of the ones I mentioned, if you were seeing it before and you're not. But we can try to find out that exact answer for you.
Awesome.
Yeah. Let's see. So we have 7 more minutes. I'm not sure, Jason, if you want to keep. There are a few more questions, or if you had something else you wanted to cover, or if the people here wanted to say something more specifically that hasn't been captured by the questions yet.
Yeah, so for me, there's just a couple WIP housekeeping notes that I want to cover at the very end. So we've been cruising through questions, and there have been a bunch of them. And I'll just throw one of them out there because I'm actually a little curious about it. Does the Xbox controller work better when it's connected via Bluetooth, or if it's hooked up via USB cable? Is there really any difference in performance between the two methods?
That will be depending how many Bluetooth devices you have connected to it that's causing radio frequency interference. So my past experience working with VR controllers and Bluetooth is definitely top of mind. Like depending on which Bluetooth receiver, where it is, interference. So probably for the most reliable connection, will probably be USB, but it all depends on your setup.
And somebody else asked, can you use multiple controllers simultaneously if you're trying to play multiplayer?
On PC, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can. You don't get the console has a better built-in support for expecting to have multiple controllers. It's fully functional on PC. We'd love to have more displays giving you status information about that sort of thing, but it's a tricky from a design standpoint, and the console was sort of designed that way from the ground up. But it is supported, yeah.
Gotcha. So Jim made a good point. Obviously, we've covered a bunch of questions. Have these questions inspired anything that y'all would like to cover? Are there any other specific details that you want to share? Did you want us to cover a few more of the questions in the chat, or was there something else you wanted to kind of toss out there for the community? Not trying to put you on the spot. It's just an open-ended question.
No, I don't think so. I think for us, we love hearing your feedback. We love knowing kind of what's your top pain points, because kind of with that passion is you want it to work and it's not working, and we want to convert that kind of passion to loving the product. And so keep the feedback coming. We're all ears. We love our Xbox Insiders. We love our Windows Insiders program because it helps us know when we roll out new releases of both Game Bar, PC Game Pass, as well as gaming services, that those builds are going out with quality, because you guys have such a diversity of system setups that really make sure that the stuff that we're shipping works on everyone's computer.
I have a final question. If no one else has anyone else to pray, I can give out a final question to get people going. For the group of the people who work on the Xbox Game Bar, which is your favorite widget? Like, which is the one you find the most valuable and the one you use all the time? And not the one you work on. It can be, but let's do the order based. I'm going to say, Andrew, you start, and then you can pass the baton, and we'll do that.
My favorite widget? Let me think. Well, the capture. You just got to go to use that and get a video capture and all of that. So yeah, that's my favorite. And I didn't work on it, so.
Who are you going to pick next?
Then let us go to Daniel.
Okay, so I have to say too. So I think my favorite, in that, like, it's the most convenient thing in the world. I can't believe this didn't exist before, is the audio widget. I think that's so awesome because, I do things like switch between headphones and speakers while I play games, and sometimes I'll have background music playing, and I need to go turn down the background music and turn up my game volume, and it makes it so easy. Like, there's no other UI on Windows or other systems or consoles or phones or anything that makes it easier. So I just love that it's easy to find, it's easy to use, and I can just quickly make adjustments and get back to my game. But then the second one is the resources widget. I'm really excited that we got to build that. So we are always asking for feedback for PC gamers, like, what kinds of features would you use in a gaming overlay like Game Bar? And a common thing that always comes up with PC gaming, because it's such a complicated ecosystem, is I want to make sure my game's getting the best performance it can on my PC, and sometimes that means find that app that's hogging your CPU in the background and making sure that you shut that down while you play your game to get the most out of it. And people use Task Manager for that today, but it's kind of a pain to alt tab between your game and Task Manager and navigate that huge list. And knowing that was a huge pain point on PC, we built the resources widget, which is sort of a Task Manager light experience within Game Bar, and it gives you that same functionality of see what processes they're running, what resources they're using, and if there's one that I don't need right now, let me just quickly close that and get back to my game. So that's one that I use, and it's a cool feature, but it's also awesome that was like 100% based on community feedback of what's the pain point that an overlay can help solve. So that's a really cool one.
That was awesome.
I'll pass it to Brianna next.
Yeah, I think my favorite widget is the Spotify one. I play a lot of open world exploring games, and sometimes after a couple hundred hours, the music just doesn't quite hit it anymore. And so being able to control music, pick music on your own kind of schedule, and you're playing kind of more of those exploratory games, is super is really nice. So I really dig the Spotify widget.
Before you pass the baton, I'm going to interject here. I'm having horrible, terrible, nightmarish flashbacks to playing the original Destiny when I was out running around harvesting elements, like just grinding to go pick all those up to upgrade the armor. Oh my goodness. Oh.
I love like soundtrack music. I listen to it when I'm doing my day-to-day job, but every once in a while on the 50th hour of the same track, you want to mix it up.
Who are you going to pass it to?
I will pass it to Mark.
Well, my real favorite is the audio widget, but Daniel already covered that. So I'm gonna say my second favorite was the what we internally, I think it's called the social widget, where you access all your Xbox Live stuff. I don't do a lot of multiplayer gaming. When I do, it's usually on console. But during the pandemic, I reconnected with some friends, distributed geographically, and we did some multiplayer gaming on PC, and it was a lot of fun, and it was really easy to just start a party through Game Bar, and you can bring it up, you can do it over the app, so you don't have to like set it up and then go in the game or vice versa. You can just like launch the game, create the party, boom, and if the game's integrated well, it all just works. So that was really nice to make it simple to do something that you sort of take for granted on console, but I think would have been a lot more complicated on PC without having that functionality just right there for you. And I guess Hayden.
Yep. So my real favorite's probably also the audio mixer widget. I use that all the time. But a close second is probably the performance widget. It makes it really easy to kind of see your FPS and your system resources, which is super handy if you're trying to tweak your settings. You can instantly see, the impact it has on your system performance without having to pull up Task Manager, which minimizes your game, and it just makes it so much easier. So that's probably my second favorite widget.
You can pin it too and like put it in minimize mode, and it just looks really cool.
Okay,
Yeah,
I have to add to that because Mark built this, but one of the coolest things about the performance widget is that when you're monitoring FPS like Hayden was talking about, it also shows a graph of your FPS for the last minute. And what's really cool about that is not only do you get to see what your current FPS is and kind of what your average FPS has been, but you can also see if there was, a quick dip in performance where you had a frame drop. That's an easy way to just look at that graph and see like, oh, it was pretty good, but then it dropped. Okay, let's figure out what's going on there. So yeah, love that one.
Awesome. Well, Jason?
Yeah, and apparently we had a last-minute special guest. Brianna's cat. There's a cat tail in the corner of the screen. No, seriously. Jen usually brings one of her cats in.
Yeah, I don't know
Where's
where
Dusty?
Like, he's downstairs eating, probably.
If you want to show off your cat, you are more than welcome to.
Yeah.
On screen. Oh,
no. He hopped away.
All right. Well, we try to take turns rotating pets, except for my dog hates being picked up. Like, she'll sit there and hang out with you on the couch and, be on the blanket or whatever, but like you pick her up and she's like aboard, like, hey, can you put me down? It's funny.
The best investment I did was the cat bed on the desk to at least deter him over there versus sitting.
You don't have like a decoy keyboard?
No decoy keyboard.
What is something that's more comfortable than what's right in front of me?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, we have zipped through an hour like it didn't even happen. My goodness, another webcast has kind of come and gone. I have to say thank you all so very much for making the time, coming and answering questions, representing for the community. I know insiders love these webcasts. That's why we keep doing them. We love evangelizing these features. Of course, personally, I got to learn a thing or two along the way. It's always great just to connect with the community and get some FaceTime. And I love being able to come out and represent the hard work that y'all are putting in that helps make these features successful. And, kind of being able to just share that more broadly. I'll just say it one more time. Thank you so very much. And to everybody who is in attendance, whether you're watching it live or if you've chosen kind of after the fact to watch the video on demand, thank you for making the time to join us. Thank you for tuning in. Of course, we'll have another one of these hopefully next month. But between now and then, stay tuned to the Windows blog. We've got some more builds coming for you. Dev and beta release preview, the routines. And don't forget, Xbox Insider program if you're interested in learning more of what's happening in the Xbox world, staying in tune with kind of some of this stuff between PC and the console itself. There's always really good overlap there, so make sure and join that program as well. Stay tuned to the blog posts they present, the Twitter feeds for both accounts. There's tons of information. I know it can be a lot to stay on top of, but there's always something new to learn. So with that, I will say thank you all, both Microsoft folks as well as everybody in attendance. And with that, we will wrap up, and we will catch you next time. So thank you once again.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.